I'm Clifford Young, your class treasurer, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jay Sang, whose talk is Retirement Financials, sharing what I've learned about the many moving parts. Jay is class of 1988 in course 2B. He stayed an extra year to get a master's as well. He spent 3 decades in IT management in the capital markets based in New York City and Los Angeles. He's currently retired and leads a nomadic lifestyle. During this time, Jay has explored the intricacies of retirement financial planning. In this webinar, Jay will share lessons learned about Social Security, Medicare, 401k and IRA, Roth IRA, Roth Conversions, and more. Jay looks forward to exchanging ideas with fellow alums. Please post your questions in the chat room. Jay will answer them at the end of the presentation. References made in today's webinar are available in a Google Sheet with a link in the chat room. And finally, if you plan on staying for the social, please let us know in the polls, as there will be different topics in the breakout rooms, such as retirement dreams, MIT reminiscing in kids, and finally, care of aging parents.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jay. It is amazing to see so many people registered for this event. I have no professional qualifications for today's talk, but I have been spending a lot of time learning about today's topic. Along the way, I've been sharing my learnings with my MIT friends, and we thought this topic could be of interest to our class of '88 and the broader MIT alumni. This is my first MIT webinar. I thought maybe 20 people might sign up, but there's so many of you. I hope I don't disappoint. Let me say a big thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join today. Before we start, just a few words about me. This is my MIT yearbook photo, re-rendered thanks to AI. I was course 2, but ended up spending all my career at Wall Street type firms doing tech. I'm still involved with MIT as an educational counselor, interviewing high school students. I find that this is a good way for me to stay connected with MIT. After recently retiring, I've downsized, or zero-sized is more like it, and have been doing the slow international lifestyle. It is hard to believe it has been 40 years since we were at MIT. The photo on the left is one of my favorite. I think few of you from this photo are on today's call. If someone had told me in high school that I would be a student athlete in a varsity fencing program, I would have said, no way, for sure. Especially since I didn't do any organized sports in high school. I spent a lot of my time at MIT in the fencing room. I even named my son after our head coach. Fencing continues to be an important part of my life, and I try to fence every chance I get. I think there are even few fencing teammates on today's call as well. Like many of you, I had been thinking about retirement finances long before retiring. The main question at the time was, do I have enough? How much is enough? How do I make it last, etc. I thought that living abroad in many different places after retiring would be fun and interesting, and potentially a way to reduce my cost of living. About 5 years ago, I got rid of everything and started off. If any of you are thinking of doing a lot of traveling, don't do it. In all seriousness, feel free to reach out to me offline, and I can share the dark side of this lifestyle. As I started approaching 60, I felt the need to start digging into the details of Social Security. Medicare-related decisions would be coming up at age 65, so I started learning about that as well. Then I needed to learn about Roth conversions and RMDs, etc. The list of topics to learn kept piling on. Today's session is a summary of my many learnings. The list of topics to learn kept piling on. Today's session is a summary of my learnings as I delve further and further into this rabbit hole. There were many surprises, quirks, and nuances that I ran into. My goal today is to share those findings. But before I start, I'd like to share a quick video. By far, this is my favorite travel video. Over the past 3 years, I went from being that guy that would just look at the ocean from the beach, maybe go for a quick dip, to a person that just loves being in the ocean, swimming, snorkeling, and diving. This was definitely not on the bucket list, for sure. If you are planning to visit Hawaii, I'll tell you where you might find these dolphins. Perhaps you will get lucky too. Today's discussion is for information and education purposes only. The content is not financial, tax, or legal advice. Please seek qualified professionals to review your specific situation. This Yogi Berra quote seems very appropriate for today's discussion. I'm a spreadsheet guy, and I started building one for retirement financials. It started out simple enough, but the spreadsheet started getting more and more complex as I learned more. In today's talk, I'll be sharing the things I learned along the way regarding Social Security, Medicare, 401ks and IRA, Roth and Roth Conversions, HSA, and more. I hope you find this helpful, but I won't be covering stock tips, investment ideas, asset allocation topics. Retirement financial planning requires you to make forecasts not only near future, but many years out. There are so many variables that go into such a forecast. And the probability of getting it right is almost nil. Nonetheless, I have found the exercise very informative. I hope you find the same. All the resources referenced in the slides are available on Google Sheet with the link available in the chat window. And the recording of this webinar will be made available to those that have registered. If you are one of the lucky ones with just Social Security income and or a pension and a gazillion dollars in a checking account or under your mattress, then you never need to tap into pre-tax or post-tax accounts, since you can just spend the cash to cover your expenses. But for the rest of us mortals, we will likely need to cover our expense shortfall with the money out of pre- and post-tax accounts. Taking money out of these accounts are taxable events. So we need to model the income side, the expense side, and when and how we pull money out of the pre- and post-tax accounts for the many years ahead. In short, key aspects of retirement financials is tax planning. I have listed some of the key drivers for forecasting our future. For longevity, there's no way to know how many years we have left, but we can try to model it. A life expectancy of a US male who is 60 now is 82 years old. But we should also look at our family history of parents and grandparents for both spouses. Many life insurance websites have simple calculators to forecast longevity. As for asset appreciation rate, if you assume a 20% annual rate of portfolio returns for the next 30 years, then you'll get a very rosy picture. But of course, you should pick a conservative number based on the assets that you have. You can always adjust this up or down to see how your plan changes. For inflation, model something that is relevant to your main cost categories, such as housing, food, and healthcare. For healthcare costs, you need to forecast not only the premium cost, but out-of-pocket spend as well. The other thing to consider is the healthcare cost may not be very linear over the next few decades as we age. For example, you may want to think about some step changes to cost for your 70s and 80s. If you think you will have other major expenses, such as extensive travel, supporting elderly parents, you should try to model that as well. And of course, changes to the tax codes needs to be modeled. Just like asset appreciation and inflation rates, this one is a big unknown. Most software tools apply inflation rates to standard deductions and tax brackets, but keep the tax rates the same. If you think about it, we are trying to forecast, that is, predict potentially 30 years into the future. There are so many unknowns and moving parts, but I have found it a worthwhile exercise nonetheless. Remember, you can adjust your plan every year as you go, so don't stress out. Now let's get into some specifics. Let's start with Social Security. This may be the first decision point for some of us that are thinking of starting Social Security early, like age 62. By the way, in the coming slides, I will be making many references to death. I hope this won't bother you too much. We all got to go at some point. You may be getting an annual statement in the mail from Social Security that has your benefit numbers. You can also create a login account and log into ssa.gov anytime. This website is pretty easy to use. You can select your age you want to start benefits, and it will tell you your benefit amount. While you are on the website, you can also check your work pay history and make sure that it is correct, as this will impact your benefit amounts. The benefit amount you see on the website is based on current dollars. So if you're 60 now and want to get an idea of what your age 67 benefit amount will be when you actually turn 67, then you need to scale the benefit number by some annual COLA, that is cost of living adjustment. While ages 62 being early, 67 full retirement age, and 70 the latest are often referenced as times to start Social Security, you can actually start at any time between 62 and 70. If you are single or married, where both people are of similar age and have similar benefits, then neither spousal nor survival benefits matter. Spousal benefits matter when the individual has a benefit amount less than half of the other spouse. The term spousal benefit is confusing as it refers to the amount that tops up the individual's benefit. For example, if your spouse has a $3,000 benefit, the max spousal benefit is 50%. That is $1,500. But if the other spouse has an individual benefit of $1,000, then the spousal benefit is only $500. So the term spousal benefit is the amount that is topped up on top of your benefit to get to the 50% of your spouse. As a side note, ex-spouses are potentially eligible for spousal benefit, and there is no maximum number of ex-spouses. The other thing to note about spousal benefit is that the benefit amount is independent of when the other spouse starts his or her benefit. For example, just because the other spouse started benefits early, such as age 62, or late, like 70, the spousal benefit number does not change. But if the spousal benefit receiving person starts early, like 62, or late, like 70, the benefit amounts will be adjusted. For survival benefit, the surviving spouse receives 100% of the benefit that the deceased person was receiving at the time of death. So if the deceased person had started benefits at age 70, the surviving benefit amount will be the highest. Figuring out when to start Social Security for a married couple could be challenging, as you need to figure out impact to both people. As you can see, whether one starts early or late is very specific to individual circumstances, but I've added some examples here on the slide. A small point to add, when delaying after 67, the 8% is not compounded each year, which is often misquoted in social media. The 8% increase is based on your age 67 benefit. So for example, if your benefit amount at 67 is $1,000, then you get $80 more for every year you delay. There are concerns out there that Social Security is running out of money. If you are worried, then you can consider modeling just 77% of the benefit amounts. I found that it is important to look at Social Security timing question holistically. You need to consider scenarios when both spouses are alive and when one passes, and factor in spousal and survival benefits during the combined lifetime. I have found two great resources. The OpenSocialSecurity.com is a great free calculator. It is very easy to use. There is also a great YouTube video of Rob Berger, who is a great resource, interviewing the creator of the Open Social Security Calculator. Let's shift to Medicare. For many of us, we have been paying for it for most of our working lives via payroll taxes. But it turns out that payroll taxes have been for just Part A, which covers hospitalization. So if you pay payroll taxes over the years, then you'll likely not have any premium costs for Part A when you start Medicare at age 65. Part B is for outpatient services like visiting doctors, and Part D is for prescriptions. Both Part B and D do have monthly premiums that you need to pay if you decide you want these coverages. The term IRMA comes up often when learning about Medicare and retirement finances. IRMA is basically an additional charge for B and D based on income levels. During your retirement years, your sources of income may include Social Security, a pension, pre-tax distributions, Roth conversions, dividends, or realized capital gains. Your combined income could put you in IRMA territory. IRMA could also kick in when one spouse passes, since IRMA brackets are lower for a single filer. On the slide, there are 4 examples for 2025 annual cost of Part B and D for married filing jointly. The first row represents base case scenario, where there is no IRMA. For the other scenarios, you can see that IRMA surcharges for a couple can be high. For 2026, the Part B base premium and IRMA are estimated to go up by 11%. The other gotcha for IRMA is that it uses income from 2 years ago. So if you start Medicare at age 65, then income from 63 is used. Yes, this is truly bizarre. Also, the IRMA income brackets are cliffs. If you exceed just by $1, then you fall into the new bracket. That one extra dollar of income could end up costing you thousands in IRMA. So if pre-tax contributions, distributions, or Roth conversions push you into the next IRMA bracket, then you will pay the full IRMA amount for that bracket. This is different than how income tax brackets work, where the first part of your income is taxed at the first bracket, etc. In retirement, income can be managed, such as when to do pre-tax withdrawals, Roth conversions, etc. So there are some opportunities to proactively manage future IRMA costs by planning ahead. I have some friends that either live full-time outside the US or live part-time outside the US. It is tempting to think about not enrolling in Part B and D until you need it. I was surprised to find out that it can be costly to do this. The penalty applies to lifetime of premiums, so one has to think carefully about this. Yes, I said lifetime. I guess the idea of having penalties makes sense. If everyone didn't pay premiums until they needed benefits, then the plan would not be solvent. So these penalties discourage this behavior. Let's cover the pre-tax accounts such as 401k and traditional IRA. At some point, the government wants to collect income taxes. on these pre-tax funds. Starting at age 75 for most, you must start taking money out each year. This is called RMD, which stands for Required Minimum Distribution. Any gains in your portfolio is not considered capital gain. The money you pull out is called a distribution and is taxed at your marginal income tax rate. To figure out your RMD for a given year, you take the previous year ending balance and divide by a number called life expectancy factor. IRS has 3 factor tables. The table you use depends on your specific situation, driven by marital status, age difference, and beneficiary setup. This factor table is quite large, and IRS even accounts for someone who is 120 years old, married to a 20-year-old. The factor decreases each year by something close to 1. So RMD is like a forced recognition of income, just like a stock fund paying out dividends. A couple of other items to note. If you have an IRA and older than 70 and a half and planning to do charitable donations, then donating directly from an IRA using a qualified charitable distribution called QCD may be worth considering. The QCD amount does count towards your RMD, but it is not considered taxable income. So instead of donating from post-tax funds, a QCD offers a pre-tax option. I would guess that MIT would be happy to accept QCD funds. If you have a former employer 401k, review administrative fees, fund fees, as well as fund choices. You may want to roll the 401k over to an IRA at the same place as your post-tax account to have one less login. If you are thinking of having your adult children inherit the remaining pre-tax balance, they will have a finite period of time to distribute the funds to themselves, and the funds will be taxable at their marginal tax rate. By the way, they don't have to spread out the withdrawal. They could liquidate in one shot since it is their money. If you want to dictate how your beneficiaries handle the distribution while you are dead, then you need to specify your wishes in a trust. Roth IRA account type only started in '98. With this account, you put in post-tax dollars, it grows tax-free, and the money comes out tax-free. Also, this account is not subject to RMDs. When you need money to cover your annual expenses and do not want to see your taxable income go up, use this account. If you leave Roth IRA to a non-spouse, they can enjoy tax-free growth and distribution for up to 10 years, but the account must be liquidated by year 10. They could do this by spreading out the distributions over the years or do it all in one shot. The big gotcha is that the Roth IRA needed to have been created 5 years before you die. Okay, there are lots of YouTube videos about Roth conversions. Let me take a stab at boiling this down. There are 3 options on how you pull money out of pre-tax accounts. The first option is pull money out when you need it. You pay tax at that year's marginal tax rate, spend what you need, and reinvest the rest in your post-tax account. Any realized capital gains and dividends in your post-tax account will be taxable. The second option is to pull money out years before you need it, if you expect the marginal tax rate to be lower now than later. You pay tax, spend what you need, and reinvest the rest in the post-tax account. The third option is similar to this option 2, but you directly put the money into a Roth account. This process of moving pre-tax money into a Roth IRA account is called a Roth conversion. Roth conversion is different than a Roth contribution, even though both are ways to move money into a Roth IRA account. For some people, there is a window of lower income years, like after retiring, but before Social Security and RMDs start. So the idea is to use these lower income years to pull money out of pre-tax account and pay tax with lower marginal tax rate. So to know whether this method is suitable to you, you need to project your income and your marginal tax brackets way into the future. There are no annual limits on the size of conversions. Having a Roth IRA balance can be quite beneficial, as there are no taxes when you pull money out. And because there are no annual RMDs forced by the government, you can pull money out at your own discretion, subject to a 5-year rule. An important note is how you pay for the taxes of the conversion amount. There are 2 ways to pay for this. First way is to take out some extra funds in your pre-tax conversion, have the taxes withheld, and the remainder goes into Roth IRA. The second way is not to withhold taxes, but to use post-tax funds to pay for taxes. The second approach decreases your taxable income for the year, which may matter in cases like IRMA brackets. To assess whether conversion is worth it, you need to consider many factors. You can go with the analytic approach by forecasting asset returns, inflation, modeling your taxable income, and future taxes. Or you can go with the gut feeling approach, where you might feel that tax rates are definitely going to be higher in the future due to things like the federal deficit. If you look back last 20 to 30 years, there have been many changes to the standard deductions, tax rates, and bracket limits. While the near future may be easier to forecast, the distant future, like 10 to 30 years, may be very difficult. The current tax brackets have only been in place for 8 years. So take any Roth projections covering a horizon of 10 to 20 years with a large grain of salt. As you will see later, common Roth conversion tools such as Bolden and Projection Lab apply inflation rate to increase tax deductions and brackets without changing tax rates. I found this great article called "Why Trying to Quantify the Value of Roth Conversion is Futile." It's definitely worth a read. Let's move on to health savings account, also known as HSA. If you have a high deductible health insurance, then you are eligible to contribute to an HSA. The HSA are often referred to as triple tax-free accounts. As pre-tax money goes in, money grows tax-free, and money comes out tax-free for qualified medical expenses. And there is no RMDs for this account. If you don't have one of these accounts, tell your younger self, that is your children, nieces, and nephews, about them. The real power of HSA comes in by not reimbursing yourself for current expenses until way, way, way into the future. You can have HSA balances invested similar to the way you can invest pre-tax balances. Some HSA platform providers do not require you to upload receipts to reimburse yourself. Finally, if your spouse inherits, then the account stays as an HSA. But if a non-spouse inherits, then HSA status is lost, and the entire balance is taxable income to the beneficiary in one shot. Okay, we're in the final stretch. There are a few additional things I'd like to mention that didn't fit into previous categories. There is a term called widower's challenge or widow's tax. A married couple at some point will become one. This means that the surviving person will be filing single with lower standard deductions and lower tax bracket limits. So it is possible that the taxes due will be much higher, and IRMA may even come into picture as well. As mentioned earlier, most projection analysis use a linear change for the future when modeling inflation, asset growth, changes to standard deductions and tax brackets. But the real world will likely not behave this way. Also, there may be significant life events that is hard to model. I had mentioned qualified charitable distribution before in the context of IRA. One of my MIT roommates shared about donor advised fund method. Even if you don't have a particular charity identified, you can still donate a chunk of money in 1 year to a donor advised fund and recognize a deduction that year. Over time, you can donate out of this fund to specific charities you like. Long-term care, or LTC, in a high-skilled nursing facility for 2 people can be extremely high. You can blow $1 million in few years' time. I have read that insurance companies regularly raise premiums, not pay benefits based on technicalities, and or exit the business since it is hard for them to make money. I have friends who have moved to Asia since the cost of LTC can be much lower. If you have dividends and or capital gains, then you would need to keep an eye on the net investment income tax. The odd thing about this is that the 250K threshold is currently not indexed to inflation. So you may fall into this sooner than later. And lastly, a common withdrawal sequence is pulling money out of your post-tax first, and then pre-tax, and then Roth. But this is a general rule of thumb and will likely not apply to everyone. So with all this information, how can you put it to work? There are several approaches you can consider, from building your own tool all the way to hiring a professional. I've been using several large language models to learn about many of the topics I had presented today. It is kind of crazy to know that I am interacting with a software program when I'm conversing with these models. I find that I get the most value when asking questions with specific details and then keep following up with more questions. These models all sound so confident in their answers, but I have found many mistakes. So I always find myself cross-referencing against official sources of truth, such as government websites. But overall, it is great to have these tools available as a learning method. I'm a spreadsheet guy and have built a decent one, I think, that meets my needs. It started out pretty basic, but I found myself needing to add more and more calculations. As with any custom spreadsheets, it can be made to suit your specific needs. But you are signing up to build a full-blown income and expense projection, along with federal and state tax calculator with support for both married filing jointly and single filers. Tax calculations need to handle not only ordinary income like Social Security, pre-tax distributions, but it also needs to handle dividends, capital gains, net investment income tax, and IRMA fees. The calculation also needs to handle withdrawal sequencing, such as which account do you spend out of. If you have infinite money in cash, then you don't need to do any of this. But if you need to pull money out of post-tax brokerage, then you need to factor in capital gains. If you need to pull money out of pre-tax, then you need to factor in ordinary income. There are a lot of potential for formula errors for sure. I have used paid tools that I will discuss in the next slide to periodically cross-check and debug my spreadsheet. If you are dead set on building a spreadsheet, feel free to reach out to me offline. I haven't used it, but I heard the Boglehead spreadsheet is pretty comprehensive. So I wouldn't recommend building a spreadsheet. Try out paid software tools. They come with free trial periods. I've highlighted two popular tools, Bolden and Projection Labs here. I recently tried both for several weeks. Both tools are great if you like to visualize your data with charts and graphs. But if you like to drill into the numbers, they can be a bit frustrating. Both tools use similar methods to model the future. You specify your account types and values, you specify your expenses, you specify asset returns and inflation assumptions. Both platforms can run Monte Carlo simulations on asset returns and see how you do, instead of just relying on fixed asset returns. Inflation assumptions are used to linearly extrapolate expenses along with standard deductions and tax brackets. You assign a rate of growth, cost basis, and dividend rates at an account level. Both allow modeling of both federal and state taxes, as well as future relocations, like moving from a high tax state to a low tax state. Both have features where you can link your external portfolios, but you don't have to, as you can periodically manually update portfolio values. Bolden has a Facebook user group that is pretty responsive. Bolden also has a feature where you can pay one of their professionals for a consultation session to review your plan. I'll probably end up subscribing to Bolden at some point. I don't have any specific experience with hiring professionals, so I'll end with sharing some great online resources. I've listed two YouTube channels that I use regularly, Rob Berger and Merit Financial. I find their content is very relevant, and I feel like I'm learning something new all the time. Facebook has a group called Retirement Planning Education. This is a very active group with discussions ranging from retirement financials, healthcare, insurance, estate planning, and many other related topics. I learn something new from this forum regularly. Let me conclude with my top lessons learned. You hopefully have a long runway in your retirement, so don't dial down portfolio risk too early. If possible, seek ways to live well below your means. This will reduce stress from market fluctuations and inflation. There are many moving parts to retirement financials, so stay abreast of changes and keep learning. There are advisors and services out there that are pushing complex solutions. If you don't understand them with an MIT degree, stay away. Try to simplify your financial life, such as consolidating accounts and documenting what you have. Try not to leave a mess or a puzzle for the next person. Once you have a long-term plan, review and update periodically, as the forecasts are likely only good for the near future. And finally, spread the love and share your learnings. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I hope you found the material useful. Cliff will do the honors and read out some of your questions to me, and I will try best to answer them. Cliff?
Okay, that was a lot of information. I gotta say that I'm gonna have to review that. I haven't really thought about retirement distributions myself.
Jay,
I'm
I have a
looking at
question.
Yes, go ahead.
Great, terrific talk. Thank you so much. Can you talk a little more about capital gains tax and where that comes in?
Oh, capital gains tax?
Yeah.
Sure. So the one distinction is that the capital gains tax only really applies to your post-tax account, your brokerage account, right? Even if you're holding stocks or stock funds in your in your Roth or IRA accounts or 401k, it doesn't matter because the concept of capital gain doesn't exist in those pre-tax accounts. So it's the money sitting in your post-tax or your brokerage account that triggers the capital gain. And obviously there's two different kinds. One is short-term. So if you're going in and out of something and hold it less than a year, that's considered short-term capital gain. And that's going to get treated like regular income. Now, you don't get the benefit of capital gains tax rate. If you hold something longer than a year, then it's going to get treated at what's called this favorable capital gains tax rate, which could be 0, 15% or higher. And yes, it is true that there's a 0% bracket. Somebody actually emailed me about it regarding this webinar a couple of days ago. So yeah, so the capital gains, as you start needing to draw money from your brokerage account, needs to be factored in, and the calculation is really made independently from your regular income tax. So when I think of income tax as an aggregate, I'm just talking about federal for a moment, there's basically 3 or 4 different categories. One is the ordinary income driven by the income tax rate. So whether that's Social Security or 401k withdrawals and so on. Then there is the capital gain tax. Then there is the net investment income tax, or NIT, or some people call it Obamacare tax. And then finally, IRMA. Those are the 4 big buckets of tax. But basic capital gain is really calculated separately. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure.
See,
I
Craig has
see
a
there's a
question.
question here.
Yep.
There's a question in the chat by Mike Weiss. How are you handling health insurance prior to Medicare eligibility?
Oh, me as in me personally? Yeah, luckily I'm somewhat healthy. I don't really, my main expense is going to the dentist. So I've been basically self-funding for now until Medicare. And most of the time I've been going to doctors has actually been internationally. And shockingly, when you visit doctors and you don't have insurance and you're in a different country, your cash price is pretty reasonable. So, it could be very low, almost like your copay, what you pay in the US. So yeah, I've been basically self-funding it or just paying out of pocket. But that's because I don't have so far, any chronic illnesses and such. So yeah.
Thank you. I see that Craig has his hand up, has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Nice presentations. You mentioned it briefly, but I'm wondering about potential insolvency of Social Security or even Medicare, reduce benefits that might be provided by Medicare if there are some changes. I know those are both unknowns, but might they factor into some of your planning now?
Yeah, great question. So from what I understand, Social Security, they publish a report every year, or they have a third party or some independent party that look at the books, and they're forecasting, I don't know, less than 10 years that they will not have enough to cover all the promises. So they project that existing cash flow, so in other words, current people paying into payroll taxes, will cover 77% of the promised benefits. So from what I understand, there is no projection out there that there's complete bankruptcy of Social Security and you're going to get 0. So that's why in my earlier slide, if you're worried about that and you want to factor that into your model, you can kind of model 77%. That's what I'm planning to do, and I'm not losing too much sleep over that. As far as Medicare, like any other promised benefits, yeah, the cost could be going up. As I mentioned in the Medicare slide, for the Part B, as in boy, that which covers outpatient, that's projected, the premiums and IRMA fees, the premiums and IRMA fees for next year is projected to go up 11%, right? So so you need to, so what I try to do is I try to model pretty pretty significant increases that are way different than the normal inflation for, let's say, for food costs, for healthcare costs, right? To cover increases in premiums and also costs for out-of-pocket costs and such. So that's kind of how I try to think about both Social Security and Medicare. Hope that helps.
I've got another question from Michael Adelberg. Is there a rule of thumb on what is the crossover age beyond which one is better off delaying taking Social Security versus taking it earlier and investing the money?
Okay. So great question. So if you have a sure investment strategy, I'm just going to hypothetically make it up. So let's say you have something, right? Some idea. Maybe it's your own business, who knows, where you can invest. You take Social Security early and get a smaller amount from Social Security because you're taking it early, and invest it in your own business, or you invest it in some idea that you have, and you're able to generate 20% annual return or 30% or 50%. It's definitely, when you run the numbers, you're going to do better than delaying Social Security till 70, no question. But that's kind of the analysis you have to do. You also have to factor in, it's a little bit easier if you're a single person, so you don't have to factor in spousal benefits and survival benefits into your whole portfolio. It's easier analysis. But if you if you're married, then whether you take it early or later, you also have to factor in, let's say, survival benefits. So for example, let's say you take 62, you're early, you're investing you're not spending the money, you're investing it, and after you pay the taxes, you're investing it. But by the time you get to 70, that amount that you're receiving, because you started at 62, is going to be lower than the 70 had you started at 70, right? And let's say you got hit by a bus the next day, right? That means your surviving spouse, right, will be getting a smaller amount for the rest of their life, right? Versus had you started at 70 and got hit by a bus, you'd be getting a larger amount. But the other thing to do is you have to think of your entire estate, your whole portfolio, right? Social Security is just one piece. So maybe you took the Social Security early at 62, you bankrolled it into a huge investment that your portfolio grew like crazy. So maybe the Social Security tranche is smaller from an overall estate, but the rest of your portfolio is much bigger. So you kind of have to look at the whole picture to do that kind of analysis properly. So hope that makes sense.
Questions and answers.
Lauren Shing has a question. Do Roth accounts suffer from capital gains penalties if funds are moved and withdrawn short term?
Okay, great question. So by the way, I mean, obviously a lot of today's talk is about tax planning. I am not a CPA, as I mentioned earlier, and so on. So some of what I might say or what I may know, it could be incorrect. So I could be hallucinating. So that's full disclosure. So I think the question was short-term withdrawals from a Roth. It was in capital gains. Can you repeat the question one more time, Cliff? Thank you.
Do Roth accounts suffer from capital gains penalties if funds are moved and withdrawn short term?
Okay, so Roth accounts do not have a notion of capital gains, right? So let's say you put in 10,000 in there of after-tax money, and it has grown to 100K. Well, if that money was sitting in a brokerage account, then you could say, okay, I have 90,000 of long-term capital gain. But in a Roth account, you have zero capital gains, right? Which is kind of insane if you think about it, right? If you have the foresight to invest in something for $10,000 like 30 years ago and is worth $1 bazillion now because of unrealized gain and is sitting in Roth account, that's all tax-free, right? It's just kind of insane to think about. So there is no concept of capital gain. Now, from what I understand, if you put fresh money in, right, and let's say by tomorrow it has gone up by 50% for whatever reason, can you take out not only what you put in, but also the 50% gain? I think you could only pull out what you put in right away and what you made, I think you have to wait 5 years or something. So there's a thing called the 5-year rule. So please look that up. So that drives how quickly you can pull your money out. So the short answer, I think, is money you put in, your basis is you can pull out, but any gain you kind of have to wait. Otherwise, yeah, that's my understanding. I hope that helps.
And I think Wendy had a question too in the chat, but some people have been trying to answer her question.
Yes, so Jay, that was just a simple one. I was told that in our brokerage account, the day it can, well, as long as we are still alive, the capital gains, keeps growing or the capital loss keeps growing. But the day that we die, all that capital gains and loss basically goes down to zero so that our beneficiaries don't have to incur any capital gains. Can you comment or verify that?
Yes, that's my understanding as well. This applies to not only brokerage accounts, but also applies to other assets like your house, right? So the concept is called step up in basis. So yeah, so let's say, again, let's use example, $10,000, you bought something like 40 years ago, right? And in a brokerage account, and you've never sold it, and it's worth $1 billion now. If you sell that today, then you would have $1 billion minus 10,000 due in long-term capital gains tax. But if you got hit by a bus and your beneficiary inherits that brokerage account, they get that $1 billion free and clear. I'm sure there's a state tax involved there too. This is over $15 million. So the same thing with the house, right? So if your house has appreciated gain, but you got hit by a bus, and then the beneficiary will get that at today's market value, basically. So any taxes that they owe is if they held on to that inheritance for another year, and if they saw any gains, and they have only gained from the day they inherited to the day they sell it. So that's called step up in basis, and it applies to post-tax brokerage accounts as well as a house, as an example. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat. If I'm missing something, if someone would feel free to go ahead and ask Jay a question.
I have a question on the backdoor IRA contribution.
Okay, what's your question?
Well, I guess how does that actually work? I mean, people told me like you can convert this 401k or IRA into Roth IRA tax-free, right? So I want to understand how that would actually work.
Yeah. So I'm a little vague on this because I haven't done it. I did it once or twice a long time ago, but it's an approach. I think, and you have to double check me on this, but many people are not able to contribute into Roth IRA because there are income limits, right? And by the way, all the conversation today has been about Roth conversions, right? Which is not completely separate from Roth contributions. So people who want to put new money into Roth, but cannot because of their income levels, they can put in after-tax money into their 401k and then convert that into a Roth balance. But your 401k, your employer or the administrator of the 401k plan has to allow this. I'll stop there because I think that's the story. But it's basically a way for people to put new money into Roth that are not able because their income level is above the Roth contribution thresholds. So hope that helps.
Yeah, hi, this is Rich under backdoor Roth IRA. So what you do is you work with your like financial advisor, like Fidelity. You have programs. So if your income is above a certain limit, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA, but it's what they call a backdoor. So what you do is you contribute money into your IRA, into an IRA, and then immediately that's shuttled into a Roth IRA. So it's just a way to get around the income limits of a Roth IRA. And you work with like your financial advisor on that. I also
Right.
wanted to add, you talked a lot about capital gains, but there are two flavors of them, the short-term and long-term capital gains. So just so everyone's aware, short-term capital gains are taxed as income. So short-term is any money you make within a year. You have to hold it for at least a year to become long-term capital gains. So if I
Right.
bought like NVIDIA and went up 1,000% tomorrow, and then I sell it right away, that's considered income, and it's not considered long-term capital gains. So it's taxed differently. So
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Richard, for that clarification. Actually, on that topic, one thing to also remember is that not only are price changes and gains considered capital gain taxed at the capital gains rate, but also a good chunk of what you may be getting from your stock funds in dividends is taxed at those rates too. So if you paid attention to your brokerage 1099s and see the dividends that are getting paid out by your stock funds, I don't know, maybe 80–90% of that money is considered qualified dividends, which basically is lumped together with your long-term capital gains and such. So the tax rate for long-term capital gain applies to not only for price changes, but also what's called the qualified portion of your distributions from stock funds. So just a clarification.
This is Frank. I don't know if did I go off mute? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question before. A lot of these, I think it was firecalc.com, and I imagine this Bolden, which thanks for providing these links. I definitely will explore them, especially with those Monte Carlo simulations and so forth. There's the notion of probability, right?
Yes.
And I was curious, how conservative were you or not? Did you say, all right, I need a 99.9% guarantee that my money is going to last for the best guess of how long I'm going to live type of situation?
Right,
How did you approach that?
Right, great question. So I have not tried FiCalc, which is yet another tool that is out there, but I have tried Bolden and Projection Lab. I have not added a Monte Carlo simulation module into my own spreadsheet. But generally, my feeling is that, first, a clarification. So in the simple world, all these tools apply basically an annual rate of return for your portfolios, right? Whether it's you put in 7% is typically a working number people use for if you have an equity portfolio, right? And they just keep it constant, right? And now, obviously, the world doesn't work that way, right? You may have a 10% one year, you may have a -5% the next year and such. So what these tools do is they use a Monte Carlo simulation to come up with all these different permutation of asset returns and then rerun your calculations for all these times and to see whether you run out of money or not. Now, one thing they do not do in these Monte Carlo simulations is they don't come up with a permutation or distribution of inflation. They do not come up with distribution of kind of wacky tax rate changes. They're just changing the asset return side. So, and plus we're forecasting 5, 10, 15, 30 years out, right? So I kind of tend to dismiss a lot of the numbers that these platforms come out, even though you may see a lot of precision in the numbers, right? There's not accuracy because the underlying assumptions are very, very simplistic, right? Relative to what will likely happen. So I don't lose sleep over what's called the success factor of a Monte Carlo simulation too much. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It's got me thinking about, oh, shoot, I need to start thinking about, to your point, yeah, they're very good at running through various historical windows of stock markets over the last 100 years and so forth. And, had you retired at the worst scenario, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't realize it did not account for, massive change. There was no Monte Carlo simulation, so to speak, for inflation and the others. And the only other point I'd say is, and that's just me looking at it and my risk tolerance. And I have to speak with my spouse, and she has a different
Of
Rich
course.
tells. So there's a whole yeah, communication is huge in retirement as well.
Yeah. So I kind of tend to try to believe in control what you can control, which is basically control my expense side of things, right? And try to keep my expenses reasonable so that I don't get too stressed out when there's volatility in market returns, right? And such. And similarly with Roth conversion, these tools will do projections. Will say, okay, when you turn 70, you should convert $57,500. And when you turn 71, you should convert $62,200 and so on. But by the time you get to that age, the tax rates are going to be all different and so on. So these are basically kind of directional, kind of first order magnitude kind of estimates and such. Even though the numbers look very precise, you have to kind of use a different lens to look at these numbers.
Thank you, Jay. Really appreciate this presentation and the fact that you're sharing all this experience and accumulation of knowledge here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
There's one last question here in the chat from Bob H. Why is it better to withdraw money from post-tax account before IRA?
Great question. So, and this again, this is just a general rule of thumb. So, like if you like Google or ask in any of the AI, say, hey, is there a preferred sequence? It's called withdrawal sequencing, right? That's a key term to search on. And the general answer is pre-tax and so on. And this may be more applicable for people that are still working, maybe kind of getting ready for retirement and so on. So let's say you're still working, but you're kind of getting ready for retirement. Well, you still have income from your job, right? So if you pull money out of post-tax, then you'll be paying capital gains tax rate. But if you pull money out of post-tax accounts, you'll be paying more income tax and such. So you'll likely be paying a higher rate. So every dollar you pull out from post-tax will likely be, not guaranteed, but likely be more expensive and such. So that's why that general rule of thumb, I think, exists. But obviously, depending on where you are in the retirement curve, let's say you already have quit and you're retired, you don't have regular job income. Yeah. So maybe when you retire, it may make sense to pull money out of post-tax, pre-tax, which is basically the Roth conversion strategy. So again, I wouldn't read too much into the rule of thumb. It kind of depends on where you are. Are you still working? Are you retired? And such. And what are you trying to optimize on? So there's a big caveat on that sequencing. Great question.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. I think we're going to move on to the breakout rooms.
All right. Thank you.
Next.
Okay. Thank you very much for all your questions. I hope I got, I hope I answered them okay. So yeah, let me turn it over to Wendy.